Ryan Williams commitment, 5-star prospect that they temporarily lost in the 2024 class when Nick Saban retired, has recommitted to Alabama. I wrote a column last week basically just posing the question, how is Alabama going to approach recruiting under Kalen DeBoer and general manager Courtney Morgan? We're talking about a head coach who, though was only a Power 5 head coach for 2 years, had never signed a top 200 player, going into a place that signed 9 5-star prospects in a single class 2 years ago. And their first commitment, I think, unless I missed one, was a 5-star player recommitting and signing with Alabama. And I think that it is possible that this commitment might set the stage for the entire, like, you know how sometimes commitments can be symbolic? Like, this is a big, big deal. Like, not only proving that DeBoer can recruit at this level, but to retain somebody who was going there for Saban. I don't think this can be understated.
Look, it's huge for Alabama to get what he was, the number 6 player in the country. I think he was really good receiver. We know what Kalen DeBoer can do with skilled players. It is a huge re-addition for Alabama. But in terms of crediting Kalen DeBoer and the staff for this, I feel like there's kind of an asterisk on it. They got a commitment.
There's that word again.
Alabama they're getting a commitment from a guy they already had a commitment to. He'd already been to Alabama many times. He knew the whole thing. There was less ground to cover this time around than if it was starting from scratch. So it's a big addition. I don't know yet if this tells you, yes, Kalen DeBoer is going to be able to recruit at that level or not.
I'm completely on the opposite end of this.
Really?
I think that you have a 5-star player going back into the pool, and then like every single top tier program in the country jumping into that pool with them, and then you end up getting him still. I think that is a high leverage, high pressure situation that they were victorious in. And regardless of how they were able to do it, the alternative could have been, and maybe should have been, he just leaves. And then you say, well, it's a new coaching regime. Let's hope to get him next year. Like, to retain a player that way and for him to be a 5-star prospect, I thought was highly valuable for where you think that program is headed. Because honestly speaking, Chris, you know, if they do the accumulate talent through evaluation, lower tier players, the way they did at Washington, they're going to get steamrolled and they're not going to make it. If they're able to readjust their recruiting strategy and, you know, go after some of those big fish that Alabama has routinely landed over the years, I think that combined with their coaching ability, because nobody's like scoffing at their ability to draw football plays, right? They should be a very good fit. So I think that this is a huge momentum shift in terms of, you know, a program that's been taking a lot of L's the last 2 weeks. I mean, they've lost a lot of players in the portal. You know, to lose a commitment that is this valuable only to retain him, I think is a huge W in the win column going into the February signing period and then into the 2025 class. Yeah,
no, like, it's huge. I'm just not sure how much of a momentum shift it is yet. It could turn out to be. It might be right. I'm just not ready to say that yet. We'll see how the last February signing period goes. I know DeBoer was on the road yesterday. He called into Pat McAfee from a car. And then we've got the spring portal period as well. So that, I think that'll give us a real sense of, can this coaching staff do the talent accumulation that is needed? I just don't think getting a commitment back from a guy who had already committed to Alabama is as big of a leap as the leap that we know that they need to make. That's all.
And they had some other notable additions since we did our podcast last week. I think one of the best offensive linemen in the Pac-12, a center, Parker Brailsford, transferred in from Washington, followed them. They got cornerback Jabbar Muhammad on a official visit. So, like, they do have some guys coming in from Washington and other places to try to fill some of the holes that, you know, they had. Because honestly, Chris, they were in a bad place. Like, losing as much players as you did and having to like fill the roster up based on a portal that's closed for everybody else, and then not being able to take SEC players in the spring is a really, really tough look. Now, you know, they're doing the thing that I said that I didn't love that Jed Fish might be doing at Arizona and taking a lot of their assets away from Washington. And I think that stinks just as much as it would have stunk for Arizona. But this is a win now in no other option situation. And they might be in a position where they don't have an Alabama-like roster based on the depth they typically have, which then makes it a lot difficult to get through that new SEC schedule without, you know, missing the playoff in the 12-team era, God forbid, or not competing for a national championship. So
I'm gonna be curious real quick how the quarterback situation works out there with Milroe being back and how he fits in what they want to do. Because also along these lines, Will Rogers, former Mississippi State quarterback, had transferred to Washington, went back into the portal when Kalen DeBoer left. He didn't really have a place to go. He couldn't go to Alabama because Jalen Milroe was there. So he ends up going back to Washington. That's big for them. But I'm curious, Milroe's the guy. Like, he kind of has to be the guy. He had a good year, took him to the playoff. But his style is a lot different than what we've seen from Kalen DeBoer's quarterback. So him being the guy they're going with and Austin Mack behind him, presumably, will be interesting. But we won't really know that till spring and kind of see how it works.
I think the real genius of a offensive guru, both him and Grubbs at offensive coordinator there, isn't so much drawing up plays for the players that you are, based on their skill sets because they're really good. It's being able to adapt and adjust your game plan to draw up really cool plays and really creative plays and a great game plan for players who differ in style. So, we've seen that at big time programs a lot who go from, pocket passer to dual threat to pocket passer. Like, you have to be able to adjust those things. And, maybe with Kalen DeBoer's leadership, we'll see a huge jump out of Milroe as a passer. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not remembering it correctly. Help me if I'm wrong here, Chris. But I kind of think I viewed Jalen Hurts the way that I currently view Jalen Milroe during the year he got benched for Tua at halftime, where it's like incredible athlete, got Alabama very far, was one of the engines of that team, but couldn't cut it as a passer well enough to not get a freshman off the bench to help them win a national title that year. And then turns out to be one of the greatest single transformations I've ever seen.
Well,
and if you watch him in the NFL now,
even Oklahoma, you put him in the hands of a coach, Lincoln Riley, who knows how to mold quarterbacks. And suddenly Jalen Hurts became a better passer than we ever thought he was. He goes to the NFL. Same thing happens with Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator with the Eagles at the time.
And now Hurts throws balls that other NFL quarterbacks can't throw.
Right. So maybe DeBoer and Grubb will just simply tap into even more of what Jalen Milroe can do.
Might be an interesting Heisman bet in the offseason, depending on what the odds end up being. But, Alabama, I think, is going to be an ongoing discussion point and certainly one of the more interesting storylines as we head into the offseason and into the next season.